Today we're going to answer one of these questions. Is Bruce Lee still relevant today, post 2018? Bruce Lee came from a traditional background, mainly from Hong Kong. He made Chinese Kung Fu into the open, brought it to the open, and he also made Wing Chun very, very famous, and a lot of people refer to him as one of the greatest martial artists, and a lot of them use his concepts right now. He was one of the first to do many things. He introduced learning of different styles, mixing of styles, and you taking what is relevant and not using what is irrelevant. The list goes on. When he was younger, he did obviously I think he did Tai Chi when he was young, and then he moved into more Wing Chun with Sifu Ip Man. He also had I think he was a protege at dancing. He did I think it's cha-cha dancing, and he won some medals for that back in Hong Kong. He also apparently did some boxing, but no record of that has been shown. But apparently he did boxing. So did one of his seniors here. I think brother Wong Shong Long did boxing and showed him a bit of boxing techniques and implemented it into his Wing Chun. I think that's where he started implementing different styles from the very beginning. And when he became very popular when he was in America, when he started teaching a lot of film stars or rich people in America, and he was challenging a lot of fighters in America, a lot of martial artists. I think karate, judo, lots of people, and he really brought Kung Fu to America. And before, Kung Fu was an underground sort of style which was only taught to the Chinese, and Bruce Lee was the first to introduce it to the West. The Chinese are very conserved and did not like that, so I think they challenged him, and I think Bruce Lee overcome that. But he overcome lots of things. He was a minority growing up in America, smaller frame, and going through racism. Back then in the 80s was highly more racism than we have today, so very looked down upon. I think it made him very difficult to get into the movie industry and a lot of things. But he did. He challenged. He overcome a lot of obstacles. Like he overcome I think the predominant martial art there was karate at the time. A lot of big Western, big Americans were doing it, and he had to overcome his fellow Chinese people who were not accepting him as a teacher teaching Westerners. So for him, why he was so big as well, and a lot of people feel dishonored when people take the mick out of Bruce Lee or diss Bruce Lee, is because Bruce Lee represented the people. He represented hope for immigrants at that time, and hope for underdogs, being obviously a minority who could in the 80s couldn't get very hard to find a job, very hard to become famous. You're always being racially abused, and he overcome all of that and became a very big success in Hollywood, and became one of the most famous film stars of all time, when martial art films wasn't even recognized in America. I think there was very few, and mainly martial art films was made in Hong Kong. And for Bruce Lee, he revolutionized the movie industry as well. He made martial arts big. He really pushed, made the martial art industry in China boom as well. Like after him, there was people like Jackie Chan, and then Jet Li, and then after Jet Li, we have I think we have obviously Steven Seagal, and now Tony Jaa from Thailand, and maybe from those guys from the Raid. Can't remember their names. They represent Silat, I think. Yeah, so he was a big movement on that, and he also was a big movement. He was one of the first guys to obviously take off his shirt and show off his six-pack and chest. This was, I think, before Arnold Schwarzenegger, before Sylvester Stallone. His fight choreography was is still, in my opinion, one of the best I've ever seen to this day. I don't think anything beats his fight choreography. Anyway, is Bruce Lee still relevant? He was also one of the people who mixed philosophy and martial arts, which was a very big step in martial arts. I think martial artists were considered very brute, couldn't speak, wasn't well educated, and really couldn't understand philosophy. They used their brute strength to overcome problems. That was what was considered. But he came with some deep philosophy, which he introduced to the world. You see his interview about being like water. That interview in black and white. I can't remember who he was with, but everyone knows it. And he talks about in his and in his martial arts, obviously he was the founder of the martial arts JKD, Jeet Kune Do, which means intercepting fist. He was teaching martial arts. First it was Zhong Fan Kung Fu, which was like the foundation arts. I'm not a specialist in JKD, so forgive me if I'm quoting these wrong. It was Zhong Fan Kung Fu was first, and it was the foundation art of traditional arts. I think a mixture of traditional arts, and then he moved and called it Jeet Kune Do, which was a more evolved art, which was a more flowing from one to another. But for him, even calling he wanted to basically have a style which was no style. So even calling it Jeet Kune Do was against his concept. So for him, we have to always tag it with a name, so we recognize who Jeet Kune Do as an art and so forth. So it had to be done. But he also closed his school at the height of his success for some reason. In my opinion, I think he was trying to, what his students were trying to do was just learn techniques and steal techniques from this art and try to implement it, and we're all about techniques. And what he was trying to get across, the message that I got from him, was he wanted to get across that people should have their own style, should move in their own expression, with their own true feeling through the heart. And I think he thought he failed at doing this in his classes. So what he did was he made movies and tried to translate his message through movies, and that way as well he can obviously pass on his message to millions, rather than going to his class. He can possibly do for only like maximum 1,000 people possibly, but now he can in movies, his message is constantly reviewed and seen and taught, and also through his through his notes. Unfortunately, he couldn't finish his notes, so if he did finish his notes, it'll be quite fascinating to see what his final conclusion was. But anyway, is Bruce Lee relevant today? In my opinion, yes. We see the proof of it in, let's say, one of the most popular sports right now, 2018, is UFC. And UFC is a growing sport which is almost like no holds barred. We all remember what UFC was like at the very beginning, and at first, I think in about year 2000 and something, I think there were everyone was against traditional martial arts because the BJJ came, and it sort of a lot of these traditional martial arts didn't work. They sort of showed that they were too rigid in their movements, and BJJ sort of took over, and then people started mixing all these wrestlers and Muay Thai fighters started learning BJJ and implementing this, and BJJ was what is relevant, but they had to be mixed in with the other styles and so forth. And now you see them in nearer 2018, you see people, traditional martial arts coming in, like Taekwondo, karate, and these traditional martial arts coming in, and you see some of them move, and some of them move very similar to Bruce Lee, and a lot of them are using Bruce Lee concepts. And in my opinion, I believe that the more we move towards this, his philosophy will come back sooner or later, because one thing will happen is martial arts will always progress. It'll get evolved, and one thing will get better than the other. Like say, like the history I just said. First, it was let's see, back in the 70s, it was karate, and then kung fu came in the scene with their strong structure and moving in, and then kickboxing came in with their flow, and then that was very predominant, and then Muay Thai guys came in, that was very famous, and then BJJ was very predominant, UFC 1 up to 10 I think, and then later on it was a mixture of Muay Thai, wrestling, and BJJ, and then later on something else overtakes. Basically what I'm trying to say is, in martial arts everything gets superseded, everything gets taken over. One thing gets popular, everyone does it, and then people forget about one certain concepts, and then these people will utilize these weaknesses and try to use that against the people who have forgotten about this. So it's a constant juggling effect, and I believe right now it's moving towards back to more traditional, because people have forgotten about traditional martial arts, and the moves are getting more and more relevant. The more people are getting stuck in a certain way, people will move away from it to find a loophole, and the loophole right now will be traditional martial art, because people forgotten about this, so this could be a little leeway for them to get back in as well. But in order for, say, traditional martial arts to be relevant in the, say, for example, the UFC, they need to understand things like Muay Thai, wrestling, boxing, BJJ, because you have to, like the Art of War said, you must know the enemy. If you do not know the enemy, how do you defend yourself against certain techniques? If you do not understand the technique, you won't understand what the strengths are, so you don't really know how to avoid it. But I think some people are overlooking this. People are not as arrogant or stubborn as before, and they're looking, and they're obviously YouTube. If they wanted to learn something, they don't have to go to a class. They just look on YouTube and see the relevant techniques. I don't advise that, but people spend hours on YouTube these days. It's unbelievable. Anyway, to wrap this up, in my opinion, my honest opinion, Bruce Lee is relevant. I still read his books, I still watch his films. I think his films are great. Still look at some of his quotes, and he's still one of my idols, and he was the reason why I did martial arts. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my video. Please press the like button and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Take care.